administration?
I'm not aware of the specific individuals. What I can say is that I think that Papadopoulos is an example of actually somebody doing the wrong thing while the president's campaign did the right thing. All of his emails were voluntarily provided to the special counsel by the campaign, and that is what led to the process and the place that we're in right now, was the campaign fully cooperating and helping with that. What Papadopoulos did was lie, and that's on him, not on the campaign, and we can't speak for that. John.
So the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, said that this special counsel investigation has been very distracting to the president. Can you elaborate on that? What is this affecting his ability to get his job done here?
I don't think it's at all affecting his ability to get his job done, and that wasn't the point he was making. You guys seem completely obsessed with this, while there are a lot of other things happening around the country, and frankly, a lot of other things that people care a lot more about. The media refuses to cover it, and I think that's the distraction. Instead of the focus being constantly on tax cuts and tax reform, my guess is if you look at the records, the questions that I take in here day out have far more to do with an investigation that frankly most Americans don't care too much about, and a whole lot less to do with policies that actually impact them.
Why are you so confident that the investigation won't go on much longer?
Because we have confidence that it's going to come to a close in short time. Glenn, go ahead. Glenn's got a call. Maybe he needed to phone a friend to get help with this question.
Sarah.
Glenn, I had more faith in you to be able to ask a question all by yourself. But
The other thing that General Kelly said yesterday was in reference to General Lee, and he said that the Civil War was the result of a failure to compromise. Was he suggesting that there be a compromise on the abolition of slavery? Can you expand on exactly what he was talking about?
look, all of our leaders have flaws. Washington, Jefferson, JFK, Roosevelt, Kennedy. That doesn't diminish their contributions to our country, and it certainly can't erase them from our history. And General Kelly was simply making the point that just because history isn't perfect doesn't mean that it's not our history.
Let me follow up. You are a proud daughter of the South. When you see Nathan, like a statue as they had in Memphis, of somebody like Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was responsible for the Fort Pillow massacre, and other folks like that, is there a differentiation? Do you think there are certain Confederate figures who don't deserve to be honored, like Nathan Bedford Forrest?
Look, I don't think that we should sit here and debate every moment of history. I think those moments took place. There are moments that we're going to be a lot less proud of than others, but we can't erase the fact that they happened. I think you have to determine where that line is. The president has said that those are something that should be left up to state and local governments, and that's not who I'm here representing today, so I'm not going to get into the back and forth on it. Go ahead.
I have two questions. The first one is, you've been very clear that Trump didn't collude, but Hillary did. What is your definition of collusion?
Well, I think the exchanging millions of dollars to create false information is a pretty big indication. I think taking millions of dollars into a foundation that benefits you while making decisions that impact people that gave that money, I think those are certainly areas of collusion that should certainly be looked at.
And my second question just to follow up from Glenn, Robert E. Lee aside, and I understand your point about how all leaders have flaws, what Kelly said yesterday was an inability to compromise led to the Civil War, and back in the spring, the president said that he thinks that Andrew Jackson could have made a deal to avert the war. What is the compromise that they're talking about? To leave the southern states slave and the northern states free? What was the compromise that could have been made?
I don't know that I'm going to get into debating the Civil War, but I do know that many historians, including Shelby Foote in Ken Burns' famous Civil War documentary, agree that a failure to compromise was a cause of the Civil War. There are a lot of historians that think that, and there are a lot of different versions of those compromises. I'm not going to get up here and relitigate the Civil War, but there's certainly, I think, some historical documentation that many people, and there's pretty strong consensus, people from the left, the right, the north, and the south, that believe that if some of the individuals engaged had been willing to come to some compromises on different things, then it may not have occurred. Hallie?
I'd like to follow up on something you said earlier, but I also want to follow up on the conversation that's been happening about this slavery compromise. I'm not asking you to relitigate the Civil War. We don't need a history lesson on the compromises that have happened, but does the White House at least acknowledge that the Chief of Staff's comments are deeply offensive to some folks and historically inaccurate?
No, because as I said before, I think that you can't because you
That's if you
don't
don't
like
understand how
history
people-
doesn't mean that you can erase it and pretend that it didn't happen. And I think that's the point that
Compromise
General
on
Kelly was
slavery.
trying to make. To try to create something and push a narrative that simply doesn't exist is just frankly outrageous and absurd. I think the fact that we keep trying to drive, the media continues to want to make this and push that this is some sort of a racially charged and divided White House. Frankly, the only people I see stoking political racism right now are the people in the groups that are running ads like the one you saw take place in Virginia earlier this week. That's the type of thing that I think really is a problem, and I think it is absurd and disgraceful to keep trying to make comments and take them out of context and mean something they simply don't.
Respectfully, I'm not trying to drive a narrative, Sarah. Sarah, can I follow up on that, given that
There's a new
you...
poll out that shows that the public seems to trust many of the mainstream media outlets that the president criticizes more than they trust the president himself. Why do you think this would be, and do you think the White House agrees with that?
I haven't seen anything to suggest that. I'd have to look into it. I certainly can't comment on some study I know nothing about and don't agree with.
Sarah, given some of the criticism we've heard from the president's outside advisors, is the president happy with his legal team right now? Does he feel well represented, well defended when it comes to the Mueller probe particularly?
I'm not sure how he couldn't, considering, as I said yesterday, and I've repeated several times today, all of the revelations that have taken place over the last several days and hours have nothing to do with the president, have nothing to do with his campaign. And I think the further we get into it, the more and more we see that happening.
Sorry,
Kevin?
one other question on
Thank you,
something you
Sarah.
said.
I just wanted to ask about taxes and then maybe just a very quick follow on the discussion about compromise. If I'm understanding you correctly, what you're really saying is he's not suggesting a compromise on slavery. He's talking about other compromises that may have been germane to that period of history.
Look, I think that was
Is
part of the
fair?
conversation that a lot of people have had. He didn't get into the specifics because that's something that's been discussed very widely by many historians, again, from both the left, the right, the north, the south, however you want to look at it. And he didn't get into the details of it because it wasn't the point he was making. John?
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. 2 questions, please. First, the president is quoted last year as calling Mr. Papadopoulos, and I quote, a great guy, and today it was a liar. And I wonder, just to kind of clear the air, how well did he actually know him, and was he briefed by him often? Did he have frequent meetings? How well does he know this man?
My understanding is the only interaction he ever had was the one meeting that the advisory council gathered together where he was in a large group of other people in the room, and to my knowledge, that's the only interaction they ever had. Again, this was a campaign volunteer. He wasn't somebody that was a senior advisor, as many of you want to bill him to be. He was somebody that played a minimal role, if one at all, and was part of a voluntary advisory board.
And he
That's
only
it.
met the president, the candidate Trump, one
That's
time.
my understanding, John. That's the
All right.
only incident that we're aware of. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. Just to follow up on what you said yesterday and what you have reiterated today about this investigation and your belief that it's going to be wrapping up soon. Yesterday you said that those are the indications that we have at this time. From your point of view, is what you're saying wishful thinking? Is it spin? Are you getting leaked information that gives you that indication? Why do you continue to say that you believe that it is wrapping up soon?
Again, that position has not changed, and we do think that it will wrap up soon. I didn't say it would be 3 or 4 days. I said soon, and we hope that that's the case, in large part because we know that the facts are on our side. There was no collusion, and we're looking forward to moving forward and hoping that you guys can as well. And we can actually start talking about and focusing on some of the things that I mentioned to Jonathan that we feel the American people would rather the conversation be turned towards. Jessica?
Papadopoulos hearing, at the
Sorry, I'm gonna
Papadopoulos
keep
hearing, I
moving
just
on.
want to ask you this one thing about one of the prosecutors that is on Bob Mueller's team. At the plea hearing for Mr. Papadopoulos last month, he hinted at the possibility of more to come in the investigation. He said the Mueller probe is, quote, a large-scale, ongoing investigation of which this case, the Papadopoulos case, is a small part. So, given what he said, as an officer of the court, are you disagreeing with anything that he said in his remarks during that plea hearing.
Maybe his references in looking more to come between the Democrats and the Clinton campaign, since I think if there's any evidence that we've seen to date, it's between them colluding with other foreign governments, certainly not from our side. Take one last question, Major.
Sarah, you said to us a few moments ago, the Papadopoulos plea agreement is an example of an individual doing the wrong thing, but the campaign doing the right thing, if I remember what you said correctly. Does that extend to Sam Clovis encouraging George Papadopoulos to go to Russia on behalf of the campaign to solicit information?
My understanding is there was an encouragement. He made multiple attempts at setting up a variety of meetings that were constantly rebuffed. He also made false statements to investigators. That's something that the campaign nor the administration would ever support. All of his emails, again, were voluntarily provided to the special counsel by the campaign, and that is how they got to the place that they're in right now.
Are you saying that Clovis is being misinterpreted by George Papadopoulos?
I'm not getting into the detail of that. I'm talking specifically about the multiple attempts that he made in setting up a variety of meetings. There were more than one instance in which he tried to set up meetings that were rebuffed by the campaign. He lied about a lot of those activities, and that is the place that you, I think, see come through in the emails that were voluntarily turned over.
One thing you said yesterday, you were asked at one point during yesterday's briefing when the president became aware that Russia was behind the hacking and possession of emails. You said, I'm not sure of the specific date of when that took place, so I'd have to look and get back to you.
Yeah, I can respond to that now. The president was briefed in a pretty widely publicized meeting back in January. Later that very day, he said publicly that he'd received the intelligence briefing and he believed that Russia was behind the email.